Welcome to another episode of Sensedia Talks. I'm your host from Sensedia, Lisa Arthur. Thanks for joining. Today's webinar is Beyond the AI Hype, Building the Credit Unions of Tomorrow. Credit unions are at a crossroads when it comes to embracing artificial intelligence. So before diving in, let's make sure you have a solid understanding on what AI can do and how to integrate it seamlessly into your technology stack. Some of the topics we'll cover today are core AI capabilities that will drive credit union success, how we overcome integration challenges with data providers and recipients, what operational resilience strategies can help us stay competitive, how to get your board on board, okay, pun intended, with a strategic focus on AI by educating them on the risks and opportunities, and develop governance and oversight that ensures compliance expectations are met and AI adoption is informing a well-revised strategic plan. Those are really exciting topics. And to join me on those are a panel of four insightful professionals who bring varied and deep experience in the credit union movement and the technology landscape. Let's meet our panel. And panelists, as I introduce you, I'm going to ask you to just give a brief introduction of your role. Our first panelist to introduce is Megan Chernagle. She's the CEO at Premier Credit Union. Megan, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Premier.
Thanks, Lisa. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am Megan Chernagle, the CEO of Premier Credit Union in Iowa. Premier Credit Union began as Principal Financial Group Employees Credit Union, and I have over 15 years of leadership in the credit union and QSO space, and I've been serving in my current position for the last 3 years.
I love that. Thank you. And I know you're really looking at AI and how that's going to impact your members. So we can't wait to hear about that, Megan. Our next panelist is someone that I've had the good fortune to work with over the last year. He's a strategic partner for us at AWS. Please welcome George Estrada, strategic advisor at AWS. George, great to have you on here. Thanks. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Yes, George Estrada, and as Lisa noted, I am a strategic advisor. I work specifically on the credit union team at AWS. We have a group of account executives and solutions architects dedicated to the credit union space. I'm one of the resources that supports the team. My background is I've been a CTO and a CIO, both in the nonprofit and commercial space, and spend a lot of time, been a technologist for about 30 years. And so I spent a lot of time with executives, the C-suite and board members in what I've come to call helping them raise their digital IQ, to understand what these technologies are, what they mean, and the business impact that they have to their specific line of business. So spent a lot of time with a lot of executives and board members, as Lisa noted, and I've been very fortunate to work with the folks from Sensedia for the last year.
It's great to have you. And I know you've done a lot of articles on AI. We can't wait to hear your insights today. And also joining us, I'm excited to announce Paul Dion. He's the CSO at Quantum Governance L3C. Paul, welcome. We met at an underground at, I believe it was GAC. Thanks for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and Quantum.
That's right, Lisa. Good to see you again. It's great to be with you all today. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and Lead Consultant at Quantum Governance. We work on governance and strategy largely with credit unions, but also with other organizations. And we help credit unions level up their governance and their strategic focus through comprehensive assessments, co-creation, and facilitation to bring people together in support of growth, innovation, and transformation for mission success. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I am too, and definitely governance and AI are two things not very far apart in people's minds today. So, looking forward to your thoughts. And finally, proud to introduce one of my colleagues, Paolo Malinverno. He is our Chief Strategy Officer at Sensedia. Paolo, welcome, and please give our audience a little bit of an overview of what you do at Sensedia.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. There's a lot that I do here, but basically I run corporate strategy. I've been here about 2 years now. Previously, I was an analyst with Gartner for 23 years. So my awkward Italian name might sound, strangely familiar to some of the people listening, as I was on stage with Gartner and writing magic quadrants all the time. So that's me.
Well, Paolo, thank you. And I know we keep you very busy and appreciate you dropping by to give your perspectives given the time in the industry. So I think it's time to get started. And since we're going today beyond the hype of AI, we don't want to just talk about hypotheticals. So let's kick things off with a real world example. At Forum Credit Union in Indiana, COO Andy Mattingly shared that their AI driven underwriting process has led to a 70% increase in loan processing capability. Now, those are real results from AI. So, given the key benefits AI can bring, what are the challenges credit unions face when integrating AI into their operations? And how are they addressing those? I think this is a great place to get started. And Megan, as our CEO representing credit unions, would love to have you start us off on this one.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. From a challenge perspective, I think there's a lot of challenges, but some of the greatest challenges from my perspective is one, some credit unions just lack IT expertise. That's probably one of the main ones. In addition to that, stakeholders may not be fully committed to AI, and subsequently, staff is going to resist AI. And the reality is, change is tough. In addition to that, many credit unions are operating on outdated core providers and vendors that may have limited AI functionality. And obviously, there's a natural concern for accuracy and safety of information. And probably one of the greatest challenges in a credit union is project fatigue and knowing that this is a big undertaking. And so I think a lot of people in the audience can probably relate to just having an overall project fatigue.
I think those are really challenges that I know we've heard from a lot of executives. Paolo and George, I'd love each of you to give us your advice on practical steps given some of these challenges that Megan cited.
These are challenges that have been around for a long time, and introduction of new technology is always tough especially with entities that don't control straight their IT systems or very little knowledge of it because there is a service provider that does that for them. Old contracts with typically service providers are one of the major barriers because credit unions may be, pulled into. They say, oh, you know what? There is these new applications that my member want to use, and I would like them to be integrated with, our systems, and that is typically quite a challenge. We don't discover it now. AI just makes it worse, as far as you can tell, So there's much more coming, really. The banking industry is being transformed, and that goes from the big banks to the smaller ones, and to the credit unions. It's a very slow transformation, but it's happening. Everything is opening up, largely because of members and consumers' wishes of having very wide range of services, sometimes from financial providers that are not, in any position to offer that with. So that's really what I see, and it matches extremely well what Megan has just said.
George, what are your thoughts?
I got a lot of thoughts. So I think that so a couple of things. I mean, I think that So gone is the age where an executive can get away with saying, "Oh, I'm just not good with technology," right? Like like that's just it's unacceptable, like no good, right? Um, the one of the things that you learn when you get to the C-suite is that you, along with your line of business, you have to start understanding the finances of the organization, right? That's just expected. And if you don't, your tenure is going to be very short. And I'm seeing the trend now, the big transformation is that you can no longer be a member of a C-suite and not understand technology and particularly how it impacts your line of business, right? It's not just the CTOs, the CIO, it's everybody's responsibility. The same way that the financial well-being of the organization is not just the CFO, is every C-level executive, right? So that's the first thing that I'm seeing. That's a big challenge. Part of the challenge is so many people were lazy for the last 20, 30 years in learning about technology that now there's a big rush to try and learn it. And the people that are exceeding and the people that are doing well, organizations that are doing well, the ones that understand how to ask the right questions. That's number one. Number two, you started with some numbers, right? You said, the you gave some well, the one big challenge is that traditional ROI doesn't apply to AI. I would argue that while that 70% number is a number and it's quantifiable, there are so many other value added that in that one example is probably being missed because we don't know how to capture it. So that in and of itself is a challenge. Like, how do I? And I'll give a quick example. Is the challenge if Megan told me, George, I need you to roll out AI for my call center. Okay, I roll it out. And the objective is we got 7 minutes. Our average call is 7 minutes. We need to cut it down to 3 minutes. Should that be the objective? Because here's what I would argue. I would argue if we could bring it down to 7 minutes, we already know that our members are willing to give us 7 minutes, right? So if we bring it down to 3 minutes, there could be an argument that the value proposition is what do we do with that extra 4 minutes? They're giving us 7 minutes. Can we get more information from them? Can we provide better service for them? Can we provide more targeted service for them in those 7 minutes? So is the objective really to cut down the call time? Because arguing is efficiency. Or is the objective to, they're giving us 7 minutes, let's get them a result early on to their question, and let's capitalize on the fact that they're willing to spend that time with us. I mean, that those are some, so it's the challenges is we have to start rethinking everything as we're approaching these tools and not be stuck, because I would argue that if you're stuck only on efficiencies and ROIs, you're missing the big picture, and somebody's going to get there before you. So told you I had a
Great
lot.
advice. Zoom out and think different. Love it. And talking about kind of zooming out, let's maybe talk a little bit now about implementations and credit unions that are committed to using AI responsibly to meet those financial needs. So they're also learning how to educate and work with the boards, right, in this way. So, Paul, I'd love to ask you, and then Megan, from the credit union perspective, what is the experience in dealing with boards and AI, and how can you really drive that alignment in the C-suite that we're hearing George talk about?
Yeah, and I'll echo what George said. I mean, his comments were describing that, you can't be the CEO of a credit union these days and not be technology, literal, not be able to understand what's going on with your tech stack and what's going on from a technological perspective. And the same goes with boards, right? When it comes to understanding the technology of the credit union and the cybersecurity and all these other risks that you're facing, as well as deliverables, product offerings, the board needs to be conversant in those things as well. They need to understand it. I love the title of this webinar because there's so much hype about AI. You look at the headlines and AI is going to save the world or AI is going to destroy the world. And of course, the answer is probably somewhere in between, hopefully more on the former side of things. But this is about the future. This is a strategic imperative. We cannot imagine credit unions surviving long into the future if they don't adopt AI in an effective way. It's part of the game now. It's where the future is going to be determined. And so boards need to be a part of that conversation. They can't simply sign off to management and say, hey, just take care of that for us, right? They need to be informed. They need to understand. And so that's part of the work is the CEO, the CIO, the senior management need to be part of the conversation to make sure they are informing their board what is AI adoption for us in the consumer finance space, right? Not necessarily how we're going to draw pretty pictures or, figure out how to polish off our resumes, but really for the applications for consumer finance. The board needs to understand that. They need to be a part of the conversation to set the risk appetite for how we're going to go forward with AI adoption. They need to understand how to set the guardrails and really work in partnership with the senior team on that high level oversight, the understanding of what it is, and really developing a strategic focus around AI adoption for the credit union.
I would agree with what Paul says. I just really believe that the board of directors and CEO need to strategically make this a priority. It does require an investment in staff and resources, but the reality is it cannot be ignored. No more kicking the can down the road, no more cruise control. It has to be a priority. And then I also believe just that the core leaders, the COO, the CFO, the CIO, the CLO, they all need to have an AI strategy to develop a comprehensive strategy. It can't just be the IT team. It cannot just be the CEO or just the board. It has to be a comprehensive strategy. And then from there, just to build out that roadmap, start small and figure out what needs to be done in order to get to the finish line. And I just think credit unions, they got to start small, start simple, but they've got to get started.
I think that's great advice. And I also think you've teed up a follow-on question that I have for you, Paul. Boards are a big part of this. What steps should they take, and what steps should the CEO, CIO, that C-suite take? Let's get some practical advice for our audience.
Absolutely. Let's get practical. Let's get hands-on here. Here's the risk, right? The last thing you want to do is have your board become the bottleneck for you to innovate and adopt AI, right? And they can do that. They can be a stick in the mud. So let's bring them around. Let's make sure they're informed and they're understanding the strategic plan so they can be promoting and pushing for that for you as the CEO, as the CIO, as the technology team. So you really need to make sure your board is aware and understanding. And I think the CEO and senior team play a role in bringing the right type of content and material to the board to help educate them on the right parts, right? So you want to raise the awareness. You want to think about helping the board understand what are the risks, what are the opportunities with particular types of AI adoption, and help them develop that strategic focus so they understand what the path forward could be for the credit union. Give them some ideas about where different credit unions are playing in this space, where banks are playing in this space. Spend some time revisiting your strategic plan and figuring out where AI fits in, right? We're finding use cases for AI now in virtually every silo of the credit union, right? There isn't a part of the credit union that's not being touched by AI or that won't be at some point in the future. And so you really do need a comprehensive overview of the strategic plan and seeing where you're going to plug in, right? That's another important piece. And then you use the strategic plan to inform your approach and your tactics for adoption. Make sure the board stays informed. You need to build a governance oversight sort of mechanism for the board level and on down through the credit union. You need guardrails, right? Everybody on your team, or not everybody in the credit union, but a lot of people are using AI already, right? Probably on their phones. You need to make sure there are guardrails in place so that they don't go off the rails, right? We don't have a lot of regulatory guidance at the moment, right? They tend to be following behind in the United States in particular. And so it'll be on the board and on the credit union to really figure out what are those guardrails going to be? How are we going to take on risk mitigation? How are we going to assess those risks and make sure that we are in compliance internally for our mechanisms in terms of how we approach safety and soundness for the credit union? The regulatory pieces will probably follow after the fact. So we need, the credit unions need to lead on their own on that question.
Love it. And on the topic of AI regulation, I want to keep drilling in here. George, you recently had a bylined article called AI Regulatory Framework, a Thought Experiment. And in this, you lay out 5 axioms for regulating AI, which are learning, steering, balance, oversight, and control axioms. I'd love for you to walk our audience through these axioms and how they can assist credit unions. And then also, George, from the stance of a cloud provider, what do you think is the most effective approach to regulating AI at scale?
Wow. So, so that article was written off of a piece that professor from Washington University, Pedro Domingos, wrote, where he's like, "There's only one good way of regulating AI," and based on some comments that he made, I was like, "Here's some axioms, some guiding points," as you noted, and the purpose of that is as follows, right? So let's start first with most of us would agree that social media has turned out to be not as pleasant as we were told or sold or we believed and hoped, right? So, if you look back when social media started, the with wisdom of the crowds, right? That was what was driving everybody. This is going to be amazing. We connect with people that we haven't seen since second grade and what have you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Cut to today, there's so much division, right? And most of us, if we were given a chance to weigh in early on, we probably would have held more people accountable. We probably would have asked more questions. We probably would have dug in, especially when we see what it's done to a lot of our young people and what have you. I'm arguing that at this point in time, regulation should not be left to CEOs and government officials. We all have to weigh in as in citizens, business leaders. We have to weigh in, and that's the purpose of those axioms from Domingo's article. Is that on a high level, there are things that we need to look out for. What are the legislators putting out there? Who's having more weigh in on this control? I'll give you one: the balance axiom, right? Um, you know, Basically, there should be three things that AI should be keeping in mind: the company's goals, society's values, and the user's wishes. Right? How do they all align? It's very important that we as organizations, when I listen to Megan, I listen to Paul, and they're talking about the board and the importance of the board, right? Along with that is like, when you're developing that strategy, what are the things that you won't do? Right? What are the things that you categorically will just not do, right? And it may be something as simple as, what, we're going to automate a lot of things, but the reason we're going to do that is because we want to have more human to human contact. That is going to be a big priority for us. That's a big value proposition for us, right? And so, I am very hesitant to yield the regulatory conversations to the folks that are developing the systems and the government officials. I think we as a society have to weigh in, and we have to weigh in very heavily as business leaders. So, the point of the axioms, the point of that article is to challenge everybody. How will you use it? What will you not use or not, or do? What will you do? Where can you leverage that? Right? That value proposition that AI brings. And finally, I think the most important part of these is that this is going to be dynamic, right? What works for Europe won't work for the US. What works for the US won't work for Latin America. And that's okay, right? What we want to have is a dialogue and not just put it away and forget about it. And it's important for leaders, to really, how would I feel if, you know, when I put all my information in there, that information is being sold? Well, we already did that. We already know what happened with social media. Do we want to repeat and do part two with these AI systems? And so I think that the purpose of the axioms is to provide some guiding points, but to understand that they're going to be fluid and it's going to be different from society to society.
I think there's a lot to digest there. And I think when we do the conclusion, let's put a link to that article so that we can have our audience read that and go deeper on it, because I think it's super important. Um, Paul, I think you've talked a lot about the boards and their role. From a credit union perspective, given these axioms, what do you think is the most important thing for them to do in this world of AI?
Well, I think I'm going to build on what George said, and I love the framework, and I'm glad we're going to link the article because there's a lot of practical advice in the article. But I'll start by just, one of the ways we think about the board is the conscience of the credit union in a way, right? They're the shepherds of the mission of the credit union and the purpose of the credit union. And so they do play an important role when you're thinking about how are we going to adopt AI? Where are we going to take it? The framework is a wonderful sort of way to dive in and start to understand what's going on with AI. And really, the axioms, they demonstrate how AI is a different paradigm from other innovations that are out there, right? There's a lot of uncertainty on the regulatory stuff. We're going to have to figure this out on our own. The oversight axiom, for instance, states that only AI can effectively monitor AI, right? That's a different paradigm. That's a different way of thinking if we're talking about compliance. How are we going to be compliant in AI? Well, we're going to use AI to be compliant on AI. The learning axiom says AI is always changing and evolving, right? These systems are learning and growing and developing all the time. Again, that's a different paradigm. It's not like we're going to set a compliance for a particular process and have oversight and we're done, because the thing that's being monitored is changing. It's growing and evolving. And so maybe the monitoring is going to have to keep up with it as well. So there is a different paradigm here. And the framework really helps boards and senior leadership understand, okay, what kind of creature are we trying to manage here and oversee? So the last thing I'll say about the boards, of course, I think they are the conscience, but they have a dual role, right? One of their jobs is to ensure the safety and soundness of the credit union. So they're the guardians, they're the protectors, right? They have to protect the castle. So they're going to set the risk appetite. They're going to make sure that compliance and regulations are being met and everything is safe and secure. They also need to be the stewards of the future of the credit union. They need to venture out and take risks. Credit unions are risk-taking organizations by their very nature. The board has to help the credit union understand which risks they're going to take, how much of that risk they're going to take, where the guardrails are going to play a role. And so George's article gives you sort of a way to start to conceptualize where the playing field is, and then the board can start to have the conversation with leadership on, okay, where are we going to play in this field that keeps constantly changing?
Well, and there's definitely themes running here, which is that whole zoom out, and it's a different paradigm. And I think, our audience will think about it hopefully differently after this webinar. We've talked a lot about boards and credit unions. One sector we've not talked about are the tech providers. Paolo, I'm going to come over to you. What do you think are the biggest challenges for tech providers in dealing with the regulation uncertainty? And, that can be with AI, but also this uncertainty around open banking, right? It's kind of across multiple dimensions.
Um, I find this discussion fascinating, especially George's points and the axioms. Those things are really, really basic things. It is only about the G word, governance, or the guardrails, if you prefer. Those have to be in place. AI is not going to evolve according to what is good to people, I'm afraid. And this might be a kind of a skeptical and cold expert analyst view, but, I'm sorry, AI is going to be evolved by providers of AI technology that are driven by profit. Okay. So, depending on how close or far away you see the Terminator scenario, approaching, there needs to be guardrails. Okay. Will AI be better at governing AI than humans are? We got frankly fairly debatable types of humans governing technologies lately. So will machines be better than that? The machines will do what they're taught. The big word that I see missing is ethics. Ethics. What is good? Ultimately, AI is good if it does something good for the consumers, the members of the credit union, the credit union itself, and possibly, put some nice profits in, and it's the equation is that simple. Okay. I think coming to your question, most of the technology providers, they have this vision of saying, oh, this thing needs to go everywhere. And actually, it will go everywhere. Okay. But we have to make sure that it goes into the good places first. Then it goes into the bad places. A lot of us, what a lot of us tend to forget sometimes, they tend to sleepwalk into technology. And then, finding out the consequences later. We gave mobile phones to our kids, and now we're wondering why they don't talk to each other. So, we sleepwalk it, and with AI, we're going to do the same because we're humans and we repeat our mistakes. Those guardrails are fundamental. The providers of AI technology, I'm not sure how much they will go by those guidelines. So it is our responsibility to have those in place as technology providers. Yes, you can govern AI agents. Okay, you can do that. AI agents, and my favorite example of an AI agent was Agent Smith in The Matrix. But they are going to behave like that. What we tend to forget is that we work a good usage of AI. A lot of other people will not. A lot of other people, the bad guys typically are much quicker than the good guys at the use of technology. And so we need to define from that. So as providers, we need to focus on the good usage. And to me, the things that comes first is good ethics, good guardrails, and responsible people that will enforce them. Sorry, I got a bit philosophical. By the way, I don't think AI is about technology because it's something that actually goes way beyond technology. Because in the moment, AI by definition has to take decisions autonomously and take actions autonomously, and it has to learn. There's no technology out there that does that, okay, except what is AI based. And also, another thing, sorry if I may, there is a lot of stuff out there that is called AI, which is not AI.
Yeah.
Okay, it might be intelligent, sophisticated algorithms, totally useful, but they're not AI. I mean, I was walking in here this morning and saw this post, oh, your next lenses for your glasses are going to be designed by AI. And come on, let's face it, or a toothbrush, an AI-enabled toothbrush, that's another thing I saw. No, let's be careful, okay? If it's AI, he has to learn, he has to take decisions eventually, okay? Sorry.
Now, I love the spirited discussion here. And I'm also hearing, Paolo, with your comments about focusing on good and ethical, and Megan, start small and learn. There's real connectivity of that, right? Which is test, evaluate, evolve, and keep moving, which is really good. Um, let's change gears and go a little deeper into the technology portion. And I'm going to start with a recent report from F5. It's called State of the Application Strategy Report. And it surveyed global IT decision makers. A couple of the stats from this report highlighted 96% of organizations are now deploying AI models, emphasizing the growing reliance on AI for agile, secure, and scalable infrastructures to support these technologies. And a quote from this report: organizations need to focus on simplification and standardization of operations, including streamlining APIs, technologies, and tasks. The report also highlights that 94% of organizations are deploying applications across multiple environments, including private clouds, public clouds, and on-premise data centers. And given what Megan said at the early onset of this webinar about the constraints of technology resources for credit unions, Paolo, How do you see credit unions being able to strategic leverage an API first to seamlessly integrate next generation technologies like AI into their core operations, considering some may be struggling with that today?
Um, do I have 3 hours?
Mm, more like 3 minutes.
Okay, okay. Um, I know that doesn't sound very, stimulating, but hey, trial and error really works wonders, okay? And there's going to be errors, like in with any new technology, when you start, and you start especially something like AI, which is, and I think we're mainly talking generative AI at the moment. So AI in itself is a much bigger thing. But, uh, having generative AI, able to analyze documents, for example, to speed up, sign-up processes or even applications for loans, or loans of a certain nature or size. Those are all very good things that people are experimenting. Chatbots of every sorts, but also, use generative AI for internal purposes, for speeding up those, kind of repetitive tasks that could be done, much quicker and could be automated much more, but also for opening up, you know, I know we have, a bit of things to say about, opening up our platforms, later on. But the generative AI is very good at some things and not good at others. So is good at analyzing documents, possibly, making sure that they're synthesized in the right way. Um, is not very good at suggesting decisions at the moment, because there might be things that the generative AI doesn't consider, or it might consider the analysis of documents that don't exist. Gen AI hallucinates, okay, and it hallucinates, in a lot of cases, and the trial and error is the only thing that says, okay, listen, that's a safe way. You put that together with your, guardrails, your ethical statements, and you say, this usage of AI is okay, But more importantly, whenever you go and you try to optimize all of these processes, internal or external, they are, as you go on, you teach a model how to make decisions. And everybody says, oh, I see a lot of, oh, let's do AI for the sake of AI, which is completely wrong because, a lot of CIOs now have an imperative, or you must use AI to do that. But then it goes beyond, I say, fine, what part of AI, for what model, to do what process, and people don't really know where to go. But the point is, very few people now are talking about what is the best way to teach a language model that it is specified on a specific thing, which could be like, the approval of loans. How do you teach them? How do you teach them well? Because the model doesn't know whether it's good or it's bad, doesn't know. It doesn't know the consequence of denying a mortgage to somebody who really needs it. Doesn't know the consequence of getting that wrong. So I think we need to put a little bit more attention on how we train these models, because they're going to start making decisions very important for real people. But staying practical. So I'm way over the 3 minutes now. But staying practical, and doing it little by little, and always have a human that looks at it and say, is that right? But not only is that right, it means the right decision. Is that the right thing to do for people, for my members? Nothing. I mean, that's the simplest thing you can do, and that's the thing that is most effective.
Thank you, Paolo. And George, I'd love to come to you for your perspectives on what approaches credit unions can adopt to address the challenges of AI model security, data management. I'll throw integration in there when deploying these across hybrid infrastructures.
I think that so there are real challenges, right? As Megan noted earlier on about, the technology talent pool that you can have internally versus, when you start outsourcing. Look, I think that I love Paul's comment about the board being the conscious of the credit union, right? With that said, you have to, each credit union is going to be in a different kind of segment, right? Smaller credit unions are going to be much more tighter on resources. So they're going to be very dependent on partners. So that strategy really has to be about partners, right? Not vendors, right? We know the distinction between vendor and partners, and really adhere to that definition of partner. Who will you go into battle with, right? Who will you maybe pay more of a premium because they are aligned with your values. So, smaller credit unions that are going to be completely dependent on partners have to have a very solid partner strategy that then will inform that AI strategy and so on and so forth. And I think Paul could probably do a better job around those distinctions, but you know where I'm getting, right? Like that's going to be core. Now, when you get to like mid-size credit unions, they have more resources available. So now the question is, what do I keep internally versus what do I uh, partner with, right? Again, partner with, very close to that. And then when you go upstream with the bigger credit unions that have a lot more resources available to them, now it becomes, what do I keep internal and what do I outsource? Notice I'm leaving the partner part out of it because because of the amount of resources they have, they could be a little bit more selective across that. And then, it comes back again to a lot of what Paula was noting around, there's a trial and error, but sometimes you might want, here's one thing that's interesting. There's this push to we got to make things very streamline and be able to integrate really quickly, and okay, and that makes sense to some degree. But with AI, there might be situations where we do want a little bit of a stall, right? We do want a little bit of a pause. And the reason I say that is because AI can scale and scale fast, right? And it's so fast that the damage is done by the time you notice that there's damage, right? So maybe sometimes, through that trial and error, you start figuring out, you know what, this is a process we're going to want a human in the middle, right? We want someone to verify. So to like Paolo's example, okay, this is great. It's like I could like go through these mortgages and these loans and these approval really fast, and that's great. But you know what? I don't want to take the chance that I miss out on a member that really needed some help. So I'm going to slow the process over here just enough so that we could have someone that takes a look and then uses that judgment, right? That the machine can't be taught. And maybe we could teach it later on to have that judgment, but we're going to pause there. So I think there's a dichotomy here, right? Speed is everything, and we have to build cultures that understand that. But at the same time, there's something, Paolo, you could correct me. This is an Italian phrase that I learned a long time ago, but I love it. Festina lente, which is like hurry slowly, or translate roughly to hurry slowly, right? So there's a little bit of that we need to apply around this. But I would say that I would break it up into three general categories, right? Partner strategy is going to be really critical for one segment. You know, partner internal strategy, and then internal strategy, outsource, and partner.
Love it. Thank you. And I love how you've woven in the business value to that, George, right? Whether we're looking and looking beyond the efficiencies, right? At what core processes, something like cash flow underwriting, can we add AI but slow it down and put that human in the middle to add that value and to learn. So thank you so much. Now I'm going to open it up to the whole panel and just see what you think about ways adopting an API first strategy could enhance the scalability and resilience for credit unions, and especially in the way we see our credit unions today. We know there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There is a focus on the member and growth. Uh, what what are your thoughts on this API first strategy? And I'll just open it up.
I can give it a go. The APIs are doors into existing systems. You can push these things in, data in, you can take things out. Okay. And it's as good as that and as bad as that. Because we all know there is a legitimate use of them and a less legitimate use of them. In general, there's two main cases here. If the credit union is big enough and has control of their IT systems, you basically open up bits of those IT systems depending on where the real demand of your member is. If a lot of your members really want to, I don't know, access the particular financial platform, well, APIs allow you to do that. And as you know, that there is a very, very well governed with all the guidelines that you want to put in place. This very well governed way of doing that. And this is a win-win, you know. Obviously, opening up the APIs comes at a cost, and is a cost that a lot of credit unions are very, very wary on. But if you really are innovators, if you really are looking after the needs of your customers, and there is a massive need like that to access a different platform within the realms of the credit union, that really is an advantage. And a lot of financial institutions are scared of that. They say, oh, if we open up, we will lose the customers. You will lose them if you don't open up, because consumers will want to get what they want to get. And they're going to get it from the place they can get it from. So, you know, it is proven, by the way, obviously I operate on a very international fashion. There are other areas of the world in which this sort of API first approach has proven to deliver lots of benefits to the financial institutions and to the consumers. So that, to me, is the real importance. And by the way, everybody talks about AI agents now. And the AI agents they have a task. They are focused on a task, and they have to get there. You know, and Agent Smith comes to mind again. But you know, they have a task to accomplish, and they will learn and try to do the task in many ways. And they're clever. They will try to do whatever they want. The point is they will collect information, and there's several things happening. By the way, that collection happens largely by interfacing with other language models, but then they will have to take action. To take action, they will call APIs, you know, and we go back again into this, you know, API first strategy. How would you prevent a bad agent from doing something that can be of damage or your reputation, or you know, can do something of damage to a member, by putting in place the guardrails? And the APIs is an ideal place to put those guardrails in place, you know. So all of this is linked, you know, and all of our discussions are linked. When it gets into using our current systems, because our current systems are not going to change. You know, I mean, credit unions are not going to take whatever banking system they're using and throw it away overnight, you know. So when it gets into having to deal possibly with very dynamic things like AI agents, using very established things, the API is the gate, and is a gate that can be governed.
I love it. So now let's kind of switch gears one more time. We're starting to come up on our closure, so a couple more questions. And Megan, I'm going to come to you. One of the things that I think we've hammered on is that opening stat of underwriting and the fact that the efficiencies are interesting, but as George talked about, let's zoom out, let's look at things differently. And I think the member experience is the way to do that, right? So I'd love you to share some ways we expect AI to improve member loyalty and experiences in the immediate future, in the mid long term, and what are you the most excited about?
Well, I think one of the things that we're going to see is enhanced fraud detection for our members. And as we all know, fraud is real and more prevalent than ever. And so I feel like that is one of the big advantages that AI is going to offer to our members and protect our members. I also think that we'll be able to analyze our members' behavior and their preferences and their patterns and just really helping them feel understood and just building that trust and loyalty. Also today, people want what they want. And so when they ask for something, they want it. I feel like we're going to be able to provide rapid responses to them with fast and consistent information. But the list is endless. I think we still maybe underestimate the power of AI and what we can do with it. And so I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for credit unions to take advantage of what AI can offer to the members.
And I'm going to come back to your early advice, which is start small, right? Don't try to boil that ocean. And let's talk about now some real use cases. And I'll open this up to the panel. What are other benefits you can observe already happening or being impacted with credit unions? And let's include fintechs in that. They're part of that credit union ecosystem using AI.
Sure. There's a couple that came to mind immediately that I think are really fascinating. The first one is sentiment analysis. For call center calls, they actually have AI agents now that will listen in and help the call center staff person understand, is this person getting really angry? Do I need to de-escalate? Or what's their mood? What's their emotional mood? And to help the call center staff person better handle the call. So sentiment analysis is pretty wild, and I think that's a neat one. The other one that I really like that a lot of credit unions have been adopting is an internal chatbot, right? So this doesn't need to be super polished because it's not market facing, it's not for members, it's internal. This ingests all of the documents of the credit union internally, very safe, right, in that way. And then staff of the credit union can ask questions of it to find documents, to find policies, to better understand how to accomplish their tasks, their everyday jobs.
Paul, we found
Those are,
that oh, I'm sorry, Lisa.
oh no, go for it.
Okay. Paul, we found that really useful. We just launched PAL, which is Premier Assistance Library. So our staff can go ask their friend PAL questions, maybe how to serve a certain member need or what holidays we observe or an accounting process. But that's been extremely beneficial for us and it just creates a lot of efficiencies. And so we really see the benefit in that internal source.
And I think you shared with us when we were prepping that you've also used AI within Premiere for real practical efficiency gains in a process. Would you mind sharing that one with us?
Sure. We started a merger in 2024 with a smaller credit union merging in with us. And as I've said throughout this conversation, start small. So we really relied on AI to help with processing the due diligence of a merger. Obviously, being really careful of the information you input so that you're not breaking any non-disclosures or confidentiality. But we were able to create timeframes based on the targeted merger date. We could input the requirements of the state, requirements of NCUA, and it would provide us a time frame of the key dates that we need to meet. We could do rate and fee comparisons. We could compare policies, get a summary of exam reports, but overall that due diligence process, that's a pretty heavy lift for credit unions in considering mergers. It really simplified it for us and also created a map for future mergers.
I love it. And again, real use cases. George, you're one of our visionaries on this call. Um, what else comes to your mind when we think about the art of the possible?
Like for me, so I love the idea of, credit unions or organizations at large, but since we're talking about credit, imagine having an AI system that you've trained on your data, you've trained on your values, you've trained on your core tenets that then monitors the organization's behavior across the board from the teller to the call center to your own executives at conferences, interaction, and is monitoring to make sure that that personality, that uh, uh, vision or entity that you've created as a whole is behaving and adhering to those tenets and those values, right? Like, I mean, that is like, I mean, I study complex systems, so I'm talking about emergent behavior, and I get geeked out about this. But for me, I think that's the long form there, right? Like where suddenly I might be writing an email to a member, and the AI system realizes I'm not using the right tone, and this is or maybe I'm like, I just say, no, we can't help you. And it's like, no, it flags it. It's like, no, you should be going that extra mile because that's what we said we were going to do. Right now, there's a lot of different ways you could go into that and say it's creepy or not creepy. My point is that it's a problem. We don't know where this is all going. We're still at the initial stages. And I think that it's, almost every technology we've dealt with has always come out the practical and most valuable uses didn't come in for like 10, 15, almost 20 years later, right? Where suddenly somebody says, wow, that's interesting. GPS, right? GPS was, I remember when I had the TomTom, I had two cars, their windows were smashed because I left a TomTom in, right? For everybody out there, TomTom was what we used to use and buy a lot and for navigation. And those things sucked, right? They were terrible. You went, like they were terrible. Like after a while, if there was no signal. Now, like nobody knows what a TomTom is. You really don't buy it. It comes integrated on my phone. I mean, my watch. So what I'm saying is that the value that technology from 30 years ago, GPS was around right around the first Gulf War. So that value, we really didn't get to the real nitty gritty till now, right? Like where you got, if I'm running and I fall down, it'll send a signal saying somebody fell here, right? So I think that the sky's the limit. I think that there's a lot of potential, in particular with credit unions, around adhering to our values and our tenets that we really want to focus in a way that we couldn't before.
So we don't even know where it's going, but it will be exciting. I think you've all made sure that we understand that. This is now our lightning round. We're wrapping up, and it's your chance as our guest panelist to give the audience one piece of advice. And this should be, 60 seconds or less, hence the lightning round. But one takeaway that you want to leave our audience with. Who'd like to start out?
I can go.
Great.
My advice is to be a fast and savvy follower when it comes to AI adoption. And I mean by fast follower is to pay attention to what's going on out there and what's working and effective and pick it up and bring it to market for yourself. But I want you to be savvy at it as well. And what I mean by that is the best followers also improve on the systems that they're adopting, right? So don't just adopt it and put it into place. Improve it. Think about where it's flawed or how it can be better. So make an improvement and then also really tailor it to your organization, to your context, to what your goals are, because what's best for another organization might not be what's best for yours. So be a fast follower, but be a savvy one as well.
Who's next?
I can go next. To me, my kind of 60 seconds pill would be do experiment with AI and I won't call it technology, it's just a chance of improvement of your processes, a chance of automating. It doesn't have to be done by people who know technology. Actually, people who don't know technology probably will be better at it. It has to be done by people who keep their feet on the ground and do things keeping in mind what the values are, keeping in mind the guidelines we discussed about, keeping in mind what is good, what we are trying to do. Um, there is a very, very easy way of, going fast, slowly. Um, and I leave the citation to George, but it was a great one. There is a very easy way, which is by saying if you are working with AI, by saying, look, this is the range of cases in which you can take a decision. This is the safe bit of your work now. On this other bit, tell me first. Okay, very easy way. And you always have that option. So my suggestion is do experiment, do use it, because the potential is huge. However, use it with head and heart, okay? Because your ethics and your principles and the ethics and the principles of the company you work for are the things to be taken into account. And I'm afraid it's going to be very, very difficult to teach an AI model that.
Thank you, Paolo.
Lisa, I'll go next. It's hard to just limit it to one more item, but I think so. I'm going to do two things. Just our kind of motto at the leadership team is to trust and verify. So that echoes what George and Paulo and Paul have all talked about. But one of the other things I just want to think about, again, depending on the audience and who's listening today, a subject matter expert when it comes to technology, that's been really helpful in our credit union embracing technology and these changes. So considering recruiting board members who have that core competency could be valuable.
George, you get to bring us home.
Well, I would say this has been wonderful, by the way, an incredible conversation, and I've learned so much. Look, I think that apply skepticism and humility, right? Keep that balance. Um, to tie it back to the title, the hype is way too much, and the people that are hyping it up the most are the ones that show the least humility around this. This is the most awesome technology out there, probably and arguably comparable to nuclear power. And so anybody that thinks that they know what they're doing, anybody that thinks that know how this is going to impact our civilization, buyer beware, be very skeptical about their proclamations, right? Come to it with some level of humility. If you come to it, then you start applying, as Paula said, the value of the ethics. And what I would say is that's very important. You don't need AI to learn ethics. We have scores of book. Anybody that has the mental fortitude, go into some Russian literature. You'll deal with some ethics there. But think about it this way. We hear a lot of extremes. We won't need doctors. It's gonna destroy the world. The book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, right? Everybody thinks about it because of the images and media, it's the monster, blah, blah, blah. But there's one way of interpreting that book, which is, the creature wasn't bad. What happened was that he abandoned the creature to the world and it learned and behaved the way it was treated, right? So this awesome technology, if you throw it out there and just let anybody play with it, and it's like you're going to get what you put out there. And I think that this is where the humility part comes in. We don't understand, we should know that there's a lot we don't know, and so let's teach it what we want it to be as best we want it to be. So I would leave it with be skeptical of the hype and bring a lot of humility into it, and I think you could make some really good decisions.
I want to thank this panel, and to recap the advice, it's fast follow, but smartly, values-based experimentation with heart and head, trust and verify, and skepticism with humility. That is great advice. And I want to thank each of you who took time out of your busy leadership schedules to join us today. Megan, George, Paul, Paolo, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. And we'll have to check back in a year maybe and see what AI innovations have come about. That might be fun to do. And I want to thank the audience for joining us for this spirited discussion. If you'd like to learn more about Premier Credit Union, here's a link to their website. Here's a link to Quantum Governance website where you can learn more about what the team does there. Here's a link to the AWS website. And finally, if you're interested in more information, here are some blogs from Sensedia about credit union and AI, and our website as well. Thank you for joining. Look forward to seeing you at the next Sensedia Talks. Have an amazing day. Thank you.